Guri, Hojgaard from Visit Faroe Islands. And to those of you who were attending Vestmorgen last year, you might remember that Guri invited a very nice singer-songwriter to enter the stage and join her. And I'm looking forward very much, Guri, to see if you're doing that today or if you can perform yourself maybe. So please take the floor, Guri.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, the singer-songwriter is not here today. She should be here because my voice isn't that good, but we will do the best out of it. Far out in a radiant ocean, glinting like quicksilver, there lies a solitary little lead-colored land. The tiny rocky shore is to the vast ocean just about the same as a grain of sand to the floor of a damp salt. But seen beneath a magnifying glass, this grain of sand is nevertheless a whole world with mountains and valleys, sounds and fjords, and houses with small people. Indeed, in one place there is even a complete little old town with quays and storehouses, streets and lanes and steep alleyways, gardens and squares, and churchyards. There is also a little church situated high up, from whose tower there is a view over the roofs of the town and further out across the almighty ocean. This is how the best-known Faroese author, William Heinesen, described his beloved home country in his novel The Lost Musician from the year 1950. In the Faroe Islands, storytelling is not only a buzzword, but an important part of a tradition that has been held alive for many centuries. And the hidden stories are still today something that catches the interest of our visitors, like in this new quote stated by the lifestyle guru Christine Feldhaus. As you can see, she concludes by saying that the Faroe Islands have a great story to tell. And that story is the one I'm about to tell you in the coming minutes. My name is Guri Hojgaard, and I am the tourism director for these wonderful islands, representing Visit Faroe Islands together with my colleague Susanna Sørensen, wherever you are. There she is. And our chairman of the board, Johannes Jensen, sitting over there. And 12 partners from our islands, representing Atlantic Airways, our national airline company, Smyrna Line, our national ferry company, Hojgaard Airport, hotels and restaurants, incoming coaches, and tourist information. And we are, of course, very excited to meet you all afterwards at the workshops. If you aren't familiar with the Faroe Islands, don't worry. You're not the only one. On the map you can see that our islands are the little brother of these 3 fabulous siblings in the North Atlantic when it comes to size. But it's definitely no less than the other ones when it comes to the beauty, the people, and the tourism product in general. On the contrary, because of its small size and the relatively low knowledge that the tourists or that the people have of our islands, it therefore is an attractive destination for people to visit who have been everywhere else but are looking for something new. A few years ago, National Geographic elected the Faroe Islands to be the world's most attractive destination or islands to visit. And in this year, the Lonely Planet Guide listed the Faroe Islands as one of the world's best travel destinations. However, in spite of these prestigious titles, the Faroe Islands remain one of the world's least explored destinations. So let's take a virtual trip to this undiscovered land together. First of all, getting to the Faroe Islands is easy. Despite the seemingly remote location of the Faroe Islands, they are much closer than you might think. It's just a 2-hour flight from continental Europe and the national airline, Atlantic Airways, operates from Iceland, Norway, and Denmark to the Faroese airport, Hojgaard. There are several daily flights from Copenhagen Airport, and during the summer months, Atlantic Airways also has direct flights from London, Barcelona, and Milan. You could also choose to come by the scenic route, arriving by ferry. Smerry Line gives you a glimpse of how the Vikings might have felt when sailing into the dramatic sea landscape of this archipelago. You can board a ferry called Norrøna from Iceland and Denmark. Our sweet neighbours from Iceland, they tend to say that when the Vikings came from Norway, it was the weak ones that ended up in the Faroe Islands because they were the seasick ones. So that the strong ones came to Iceland. But we believe that they were the smart ones because they were the hedonists, the people that wanted to seize the day, to enjoy life and the beauty. Am I right? The Faroe Islands offer a wide variety of places to stay. You can stay in one of the world's smallest capitals, Tórshavn, which offers a selection of hotels ranging from 4-star hotels to mid-range and budget accommodation. On this picture, you can see a part of our capital, Tórshavn. You can also find hotels outside Tórshavn, original guest houses, cozy cottages, family-owned bed and breakfast, and camping sites around the islands. The Faroe Islands are surrounded by the North Atlantic Ocean, and therefore a boat trip is always an adventure. Nature continues to surprise people during these trips. Puffin skimming the waves, seals basking on cliffs, a school of whales, or a flock of royal seabirds following the boat closely. On a boat trip, you may feel even closer to nature and experience her unspoiled beauty. There is no guarantee of what you will see in advance, but you will have the experience of a lifetime. Amongst the many types of boat trips, you can choose from fishing, bird watching, or even try the unforgettable concept of grotto. Whether it's deep sea fishing or angling, fishing in the Faroe Islands is a rewarding experience in more than one sense. Fishing is how the Faroe Islanders have survived the remoteness and harsh reality of the location. So fishing is at the very core of the Faroese expertise. For centuries, when long time passed without a foreign boat in sight, the islands could not rely on imported goods for survival. Therefore, living of what the land and sea provided was a matter of life or death. Consequently, the very essence of the Faroe Islands is fishery. If you prefer angling, there are also many opportunities, concentrating solely on the movement of the rod and nature's impression. And then, of course, there is nothing like the taste of a fresh fish that you have caught yourself. When you encounter sheer isolation in the midst of such a beautiful landscape, you are creating your own untold story. The Faroe Islands are a paradise for hiking enthusiasts, with a great variety of routes for both experienced and inexperienced adventurers. You need not to go far to enjoy unexplored and unspoiled nature, and en route you will also encounter many of the interesting places connected to the Faroese history and traditions. The infrastructure in the Faroe Islands is excellent. There is a good network of bus routes, tunnels, and mountain roads, and at the end of the road it continues off-road. The Faroe Islands still have completely unexplored territory. So when you hike in the Faroe Islands, you can walk in your own footsteps instead of others. A large number of ancient village paths are marked by cairns, so you can easily explore the valleys and mountains on your own. You can also join a professional guide who can tell you authentic and often dramatic stories about the Faroese ancestors who have followed the same paths. The cold Arctic currents that merged with the warm Gulf Stream in the waters of the Faroe Islands result in a particularly rich food environment for nesting seabirds. During the long days of summer, the towering cliffs on the northern and western coasts shelter guillemots, razorbills, and kittiwakes, whilst puffins breed on the grassy tops of the cliffs. Ornithologists have identified approximately 300 species of birds in the Faroe Islands. It is possible to get quite close to the birds, either by boat, along and under the majestic bird cliffs, or just by walking in nature. In the Faroe Islands, you will also have the opportunity to visit the world's largest storm petrel colony during a nighttime trip to the island of Nólsoy. Nólsoy is also one of the 3 Faroese Ramsar sites that is an international treaty for the conservation and sustainable utilization of wetlands, for those who didn't know that. The unique landscape and location attracts many photographers. The ever-changing weather, rain, mist, heat, and sunshine adds to the variety of natural delights that photographers will find here. It is commonly said you can expect 4 seasons in one day. For generations, painters have traveled to the Faroe Islands to experience the special light that the Faroe Islands stands for or is famous for. Now photographers are following in the same footsteps as they too want to capture the magic of the islands. One day that I'm sure there will be a huge gathering of photographers in our islands will be on the 20th of March 2015, when the Faroe Islands will be one of only 2 places in the world where a full solar eclipse can be observed from land. Seeing a total eclipse is perhaps one of the most spectacular astronomical and natural phenomena that you will ever see. So be there. The Faroe Islands offer some of the cleanest waters in the world amongst an amazing assortment of cold water marine life. The relatively constant water temperatures and varied seabed of the Faroe Islands allows for a wide array of marine fauna, from sea cucumbers, sea urchins, starfish, mussels, crabs, and so on. The capital, Tórshavn, has at its core an old waterfront town called Tinganes, packed with traditional grass-roofed, black and red tarred and wooden houses. But at the same time in Tórshavn, that is also a miniature metropolis with great local shopping and lively pubs and clubs. There is plenty to explore. Excellent restaurants that serve food based on local produce, like fish, lamb, birds, seafood, and herbs. Even gastro-tourists will have a wide variety to choose from, and the famous restaurant Koks, which is currently listed as one of Denmark's 5 best restaurants, is a must-try experience. When it comes to meetings and conventions, as well as incentives, the Faroe Islands has a unique combination of modernity and originality. You can find yourself in 5-star conference facilities right next to a 60-million-year-old theme park called Mother Nature. During the summertime, the sun shines nearly all night long, maybe because the Faroese music keeps the sun awake. During the summertime, you can experience free concerts around the Faroe Islands every day of the week, thanks to the concept Sumartoner. The music culminates in the yearly G Festival in mid-July and Summer Festival in August. Here you can experience famous and upcoming bands performing from multiple scenes with spectacular surroundings. That was not it. There it is. The winter. The Gulf Stream brings warm water to the Faroe Islands during the winter time, so the temperature here is not very changeable over the year compared to most other countries. Therefore, the Faroe Islands can be just as rewarding an experience in the winter time as it is during the summer. And to give you a little insight, it is often cheaper to visit and stay in the Faroe Islands in the spring and fall. Enough about what I think. What do the tourists who have actually experienced the Faroe Islands think? In a recent survey conducted this spring, more than 2,000 tourists who had visited the Faroe Islands were asked to give their opinion of their experience. An unbelievable 98.8% of them were very positive about their experience. And as many as 94.6% would like to return to the Faroe Islands. When we asked what was especially appealing about the islands, they emphasized 5 qualities that set the Faroe Islands apart from other destinations. First, they thought that the Faroe Islands has unique scenery. A combination of hard rocks, velvety green grass and dramatic waterfalls. A stunning picture painted in green and blue colors, where your eyes can stretch from the top of a mountain over the endless surrounding ocean, seeing the ocean at any one time. No matter where you go in the Faroe Islands, you will never find yourself far from the sea. This is actually the same village that you saw in the last picture, but where the nature shows a different temper and custom. There it is again, the first one, and the second one. The second point that the tourists emphasized on was the island culture. The Faroe Islands have been remote and isolated, and so the ocean has served as a great defense against delusion of the islands for original culture. There are many wonderful examples of the original culture. The national costume, which is worn at weddings, events, and at the annual Ólavsøka, is one among many. The language is rooted in the Nordic languages, but it is a unique language in its own right, even though we're only 50,000 people in these 18 islands. The third was the authenticity. As a traveler of today, you can experience the same food, drink the same coffee, and buy the same brands in the same concept stores in most of the world. But as many destinations seem to be getting more alike, the contrast to the Faroe Islands becomes even greater. The Faroe Islands have a unique feeling of real. Nature is the only true ruler, and the humbling effect of nature, so strong and is evident in the island's culture. This is in many ways the opposite of Disneyland. In the Faroe Islands, nothing is set up, everything is original. There is no predetermined route, no fence to stand behind, and no plastic signs telling you what to see and feel. Absorbing reality, as it is in the Faroe Islands, almost forces you to look within yourself to discover who you really are. And as you can see, the Icelandic people were wrong. The locals here are quite tough as well. The fourth point that the tourist mentioned was the remoteness. The Faroe Islands may be close in distance, but are far, far from everyday life. Far from stressful obligations, far from traffic jams and crowds, far from normality and everyday routines. If you find yourself next to another tourist, it's likely to be your own travel companion. In fact, the Faroe Islands have even fewer tourists than the Galapagos Islands, so people are likely to return from the Faroe Islands with untold stories. The fifth and last quality that the tourists mentioned was the high level of involvement that they experienced in our islands. It is often said that the Faroe Islands have no tourists, only guests. People are welcoming and open, and nature invites everyone to participate. The nature is not just something you look at, it's a place for being, for hiking, painting, angling, diving, sailing, and absorbing. When you take a look at all the descriptions of the Faroe Islands that tourists have made, you notice a pattern. Unspoiled, unexploited, untamed, unpolluted, unexplored. Many of the words used to describe the Faroe Islands are so-called words. Perhaps ordinary descriptive words just aren't adequate. Or perhaps this hidden treeless land of contrasts evokes such unique emotions in its visitors that the best way to describe it is by setting it apart from the rest, by applying the inherent meaning of the small yet powerful prefix.